Thank you for tuning in to Gwinnett County War Room Gwinnett County. I'm your host, Antonio Jones. Today we're going to continue the conversation about the school system up here in Gwinnett. Today we have a special guest by the name of Floyd Cooper. Floyd, what's actually going on up here in Gwinnett County? First off, can you give us a little bit of your background of just tell us a little bit about yourself and um, you know, as a concerned parent here in Gwinnett County.
All right. Good to be on, Antonio. I know we tried to hook up for a couple days now. I'm glad our schedules kind of coincided here. My name is Floyd Cooper. I'm a teacher in Gwinnett County Public Schools, but I'm also a parent of two children in Gwinnett County Public Schools. And as a parent, as a teacher, I see what's going on with our discipline policies. I see what's going on with our leadership. And I decided to make a couple videos, a couple of posts online, and they seem to have taken off pretty much. And that's how I think you saw one of them, and so here I am. But I'm also, just so you know, I was in the military at one point early in my life. I was in the 82nd Airborne, and the post I think you saw is one in which I referenced the leadership in Gwinnett County and
hmm
compared it to the leadership in the military.
hmm
So that's kind of why I'm here.
Okay, so can you give us a little bit of story about the importance of discipline? Because I know you're a military guy, as you just explained to us. How does that link into a kid's ability to learn based on whether they're disciplined or not? Give us some background on that, or how
Well,
important discipline is.
yeah, discipline is incredibly important. Gwinnett County Public Schools is one of the largest school systems in the country. We have, I think, somewhere around 28 high schools, and then each school will have middle schools and elementary schools, a number of those. That's a lot of schools, over 100 schools in this county. And we have so many different levels of organization, but it all comes down to the classroom. It all comes down to the students in the classroom. And when you don't have discipline, when you have students who believe they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, they don't have to
hmm
pay attention, they don't have to listen, they don't have to
hmm
abide by the rules of the class or by the rules of the school. You get a breakdown with students in their um, ability to focus, to concentrate, to
hmm
learn.
hmm
You also take an inordinate amount of time when there's bad discipline or discipline issues of a teacher's time, taking care of that. And that takes away from education, takes away from their time on task. So discipline is incredibly important.
Right. So, what I've been seeing is I'm hearing on the ground that some of the teachers are not having the support of some of their superiors, and also some of the principals have been complaining about not being able to, enact enough, I guess, an effective discipline policy to where they feel like the student will get the student to get turned around and going in a different direction. I know that the Gwinnett County Schools has these tribunals and everything, but it's strictly my opinion that there should be some level to where maybe these kids that are getting in trouble, that's fighting and assaulting other kids, maybe they need to start going to just regular public court, maybe outside of the tribunal. I'm not sure how that works. Can you give me just a little bit of background of somebody that's listening, of how say a kid gets in trouble and they get to a certain point, and how how the process goes to the when they end up in the tribunals? How does that process work? You
Yeah,
know.
so right now that process is a little bit muddled. It's a little bit muddied, and I want to make sure that everyone that's listening understands. I fully support our local administrators. They are in a very tough position right now. They have for years done an outstanding job of keeping discipline in Gwinnett County Public Schools. Our schools were run very, very well, and I didn't necessarily agree with every decision made, obviously, but by and large, our local administrators, principals, assistant principals that I know, they take their job very seriously. They try to utilize the judgment that got them to the position that they're at, and they were very effective in doing so.
hmm
What has happened is because of the new discipline policy, this JDCI
hmm
that's come down, administrators are being told one thing. They're being told you can't do this. You may not be able to send, but a certain number of people, maybe a quota, maybe none at all to panel.
hmm hmm
Um, you must do everything you can to use restorative justice, keeping the kids in the classroom, and doing interventions in place.
Hmm.
And then whenever the discipline breaks down, and as we saw South Gwinnett with all the fights in one day at South Gwinnett, we've had multiple lockdowns in the county this year.
Hmm.
We've had children stepping off school grounds and getting shot and killed. Then when we have a school board meeting, we're told nothing changed with the policy. Why did we get here? We had a school board member ask a very pertinent question: how did we get here? Because from what I understand, we copied and pasted a lot of things, and not a whole lot has changed. And so what's happening is they're kind of marginalizing principals. They're marginalizing the assistant principals. They've been given a position based on competency and judgment in the classroom to rise to a level where they can handle discipline issues. And now they're taking all of that competency and judgment out of their hands. And they're saying one size fits all in every classroom. You made a great point. You have someone fighting. There may be interventions you could do in the classroom, maybe interventions you could do in a short term through ISS or OSS. But now we have a one size fits all. And so, in Gwinnett County, I'm going to mention schools because not all schools are the same. You have North Gwinnett and South Gwinnett are two totally different cultures. Yet they're being told you must treat everyone at all of these schools exactly the same and don't use your judgment anymore. And then when they start to question that, whenever stuff comes up in the media, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't know why they're doing what they're doing because nothing really changed. And so they've been putting it in a very bad spot.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Point quick on that. If you ever saw the movie A Few Good Men, when Colonel Jessup was up on the stand and he ordered the code red, and then he denied he ever ordered the code red, that's what it feels like. It feels like we're going to tell you to do one thing, but then when you do it and the media comes in, all of a sudden, no, we didn't tell you to do anything at all, and it just smells fit.
Yeah. Well, my view is that a lot of the policies and things have been politicized. So you got some of the superiors, they're saying one thing and then putting certain things on paper but they really don't want things to be enforced the way that they need to be because they don't want the public scrutiny that's going against the narrative that's being peddled, around the country. So everybody's in an awkward position. And it's also feeding the students, they're listening to the media, they're listening at the radio, and they're hearing that, certain groups of people are being unfairly or unjustly disciplined. And that's just not true. The bottom line is, as I've said before, you have to hand out discipline, evenly, but it needs to be based on the offense of a particular student, and you can't start picking winners and losers based on quotas. It's got to be based on the actions that they've done. So it's getting pretty wild out here in Gwinnett, and these same kids have to go out into society. There was a shooting in Beaufort, I think maybe a week ago, and these kids age range from about 16 years old to 20. So I'm like, these same kids, they have a second opportunity to be corrected in high school, and we're failing them again by being too lenient. So I'm sure that these kids that pulled this shooting off and murdered a couple of people, I believe, have had these kids that have had multiple chances, and maybe they should have been a lot stricter on them earlier, and they would have had more potential of being corrected.
It's a shame that our students, we're treating our students collectively, corporately, and within the county, how we would never treat our own children. We would never let our children go and pitch a fit in the store and get away with it. We would never let our children go and punch the kid next door and get away with it for no reason. We would never let them steal and we know that they're stealing and then say, no, there's not going to be any consequences, because we know we give them consequences because we love them. We love them and we want to change their behavior. We want them to consider what they're doing, to consider other people. There's so many reasons to discipline. And by not disciplining, we are doing our students, the marginalized students, the ones that are doing these things, the ones that feel emboldened to do it, we're doing them such a disservice by letting them think that if they just get a diploma, their life's going to be good and they continue the same behavior. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Right, right. You have to have discipline is the foundation of everything. There are a lot of smart people that are incarcerated. I've my grandmother does a prison ministry. She has as long as I can remember, and she tells me these guys are some of the smartest people, that intelligent that you can come across, but they didn't have no discipline. And our school system, like you said, we wouldn't let one of our kids kick and scream and carry on, in a store and falling out. So we're trying to shape society and send these kids in a good positive direction. And you have to have discipline at all. You can sink or swim with discipline. I've seen people that have more discipline get further than people that were actually smarter than them, because your attitude is also part of self-discipline. So I would encourage any teachers, to stay in the fight right now. We're going to keep supporting teachers and good policies, and saying the things sometimes it might be politically incorrect for them to say. That's the whole purpose of the show. And we want them to know that the Gwinnett County War Room Gwinnett County, we've got your back. This is the voice and the apparatus for the people here in Gwinnett County. So I appreciate you coming on tonight, and let people know how to follow you or get in touch with you. If you have an email address or newsletter or something like that, now's the time to let the audience know.
All right. So if you're on Facebook, there is one of the pages on Facebook, Gwinnett Parents for Quality Education. I post on there sometimes, and I have posted on there. You can look me up. But I have an email address based on some of those posts. That's not the topic here, but it's called GCPS Teachers for Change, and with the number 4 not spelled out. GCPS Teachers for Change at gmail.com. If you send me an email, I'll respond. I've responded to everyone so far, but it's getting kind of big, but we're doing our best.
All right, that sounds great. We appreciate what you're doing, and stay in the fight. This won't be the last time we have you on. Looking forward to many more.
All right, good to see you.
All right, thanks.